Well, hello, Helen. It's good to have you with us today. Thank you for agreeing to be on our Community Corner, which is our Tuesday thing we do on our Facebook, where we interview someone who's in our community of Dundonald or Troon. So, Helen, do you want to just introduce yourself briefly and tell folks how we know each other?
So I am Helen Hogg. I'm married to James, who you may have seen earlier, and I am I think my new job title, I've got a new job title, which is quite exciting. I'm the Children's and Family Worker at St Meddan's Parish Church. And I know Lynsey because she's a minister and friends with my husband, and we've kind of caught up. When I took you through to the General Assembly, that's when we really kind of had a great chat and got to hear all about each other's families.
That's right, because James and I were at the General Assembly, was that last year or the year before? Was that just last year?
Do you know, I think it might have been last year, actually.
Yes, and it was a great time to get to know you better, and you've been very welcoming to me since I've moved to these parts. Very welcoming.
Great to have somebody who thinks the same kind of way as me and are just a little bit crazy, having families together, having to do kind of housework in amongst ministry is quite a kind of juggle.
Yeah, it's nice to have somebody to talk to about these stresses and strains. But anyway, today what we're going to talk about is nurturing the faith of children. Now, I know you have a special gifting and calling in working with kids. So what do you think is important for Christians, how we as Christians nurture the faith of our children? Not just leaving it up to the youth minister, but how can all Christians nurture the faith of the young?
Yeah, I think that's probably quite key. It's great to have a children's and family worker, but often when churches employ a children's worker or a youth worker, the first thing that happens is virtually everybody pulls back, because they think that the youth worker is there to kind of do the job and to get alongside the young folks. And I actually think it's maybe that they're a bit hesitant as well, because they see somebody with gifting and they start to feel as if they don't have any. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, there's a danger in that with churches, because it's everybody's responsibility. You know, it's absolutely everybody's responsibility to kind of nurture it. And why do we do that? Well, because anything we value, we nurture. Mm-hmm. You know, anything we value in life, you know, whatever it is. I've just got a fancy new iPad, which I'm using for my notes, which is really exciting. And we are a bit of an Apple kind of family in that sense. And when you unbox your iPad, there's, you know, Steve Jobs was absolutely right when he invested in that kind of thing, because there's, you know, not everybody will be like this, but we do get a real joy out of this kind of prized possession, you know, and that is the kind of thing for our children and our young people. They're not prized possessions, but they are valuable, and they are, you know, as a mum, obviously I've got two wee ones, or they're not so wee now, they're growing up, but they are the most valuable things in my life, you know, and they're also quite fragile. You recognize that when they're so young, they're impressionable. You're always worried about what's happening. You're worried about when I was pregnant with Jack, I had the worst kind of time of just feeling like something was going to happen to him. The whole way through the pregnancy, I just felt like he wasn't going to make it, or we weren't going to make it. And we just had this kind of, and I don't know what it really was round about that, or what the fear was round about that. But the kind of nurture side was where you did everything you could to make it as good as you could. And he's fine, and he's here. It wasn't quite as easy coming into the world, but he is here. And I think that's the kind of thing that you do. You realize that these little beings are so precious. And for those folks that are gardeners, I am not one, but I watch people spend hours in a garden nurturing the plants and then enjoying the joy as those plants flourish. And that's our kids, isn't it? We get those moments of joy. I have an 8-year-old going on 14-year-old who's been doing all our Sunday club stuff, and just watching her teach Bible stories at 8 and kind of nearly 9 years old, and she's kind of like doing a whole lot of this kind of teaching, and she's been taking on which we've been kind of telling her. And then we'll sit at the dinner table. We don't often sit down like that very often, but we'll be sitting chatting, and Jack will say, Jack's what, 7 now, He'll say, Mum, that's like that story with Peter, or that's like that story with Paul. And there's just that moment of just joy that triggers off kind of that whole thing, that they've just heard what you've been saying, they've taken it on a little bit. And then when they say, we had a kind of time where Evie was just feeling really lonely in the playground for no apparent reason. You know, she's got loads of friends. We just moved into the area, but she was getting time to kind of see people. And I said, well, why don't you just spend a bit of time praying before you go off to play, and then ask God who's there that you could play with. And so she did that a couple of days, and she came home and I asked her how it had gone, and she said, oh, so-and-so didn't have anybody to play, and I was able to kind of go and be a friend to them. And so just to see them putting in those little life lessons and it becoming, you know, I think we've been kind of chatting there about authenticity, you know, really authentic, real. It's not just a case of hearing a story, but it's putting that into action. It's about a kind of lifestyle. And so why is it really important for everybody in the church to do that? Because that's what God teaches. You know, we kind of hear, don't we, about let the children come to me, because there's a faith, we can learn so much from them. I think that's one of the big ones for me, is their childlike faith is something that's incredible, because actually as adults we make things very, very complicated. We kind of add on things, we kind of add into little bits of the gospel that, you know, we can believe this if you do that, and it just creeps in so carefully, and children just don't do that. You know, it's really black and white for them. And when they come back and you say, why do we need to love people? Well, because God told us to. And they don't add in all the baggage. And so I think they can teach us a lot. That's one of the reasons. We can learn a lot from them. But also just there's a sense of real joy and life that comes from children and young people. And I think adults benefit from that. I mean, we've just finished an all-age service. We try to kind of do several throughout the year. They're not easy. One of the things that James and I had been discussing over the last week was, you know, is it possible even to do all age worship? Because somebody always gets left out. I mean, the number one thing I hear from people who mean really well is, I don't really enjoy the all age service.
Yeah, and I was looking actually, because you had an all age service and we did our youth service on Sunday, and you know, what I was sharing with you earlier was, you know, the thing I hate hearing in the church is, oh, the children are the future of the church. And we're like, no, they're our present. They're right here in front of us. Let's engage with them. Let's nurture them. Let's enjoy them. Let's celebrate them. And I was just so gifted, so blessed that these kids, you know, secondary school age children, wanted to share their gifts with us and help me put the service together.
And there's something really valuable about letting them do that and not just paying lip service to that. You know, quite often we'll say, oh yeah, you know, yep, they can be on a committee, but they're just a kind of like a token gesture. You know, it's about kind of really letting them kind of use their gifts. And the number of times that adults will really, really be blessed from just a child taking part. I mean, we had loads of kids who were reading over the service, and there's just something in it when you see a young person. I mean, one of the wee girls that read right at the beginning, she struggles with her reading. She really does. And just to get to the end of the verse, she did a super job, and her grin just kind of like beamed across her face, and the congregation feel that. And I think you kind of feel what a sense is God's joy in all of that, and God's kind of pleasure. You know, that's the worship. And I think the feeling that you get a tiny part of within that is just God's pleasure in his children, because after all, we are all his children, and this is just a reflection. So in some ways it's being part of a family, isn't it? I mean, I think sometimes
absolutely.
we can find that hard.
And I was just thinking, you know, our older folks love seeing the children in church, and for some older adults, it's, you know, they're not seeing any kids at the moment because with church not being fully open yet. You know, so it's very hard doing these online services. Even harder doing it with the kids and trying to get all the videos together. But, you know, I think it's just so important that we're all involved in nurturing the faith of our children. And if we think it is just the sole responsibility of our youth minister or the minister, or a children's worker or the Sunday school teacher, we've got the wrong attitude, that we have to
I think
really
you miss
celebrate.
out.
Yeah,
I think people don't realize how much they miss out if they leave it to them. You know, one of the kind of ladies within our church, she's one of the most special people. You know, she's kind of she comes, she does our Sunday school, and the kids, they just love to give her a cuddle. And you know, she's going to be on the list of half of our Sunday school when they come back, just to hug her. And I saw a lovely video of a couple of our kids who actually just went round to give her a hug, and it means so much to her. She doesn't have anybody else at home, and so Sunday is the time where she just gets hug after hug after hug, and I think that's really special. And what a wonderful kind of thing that we're not denied with this virus, that the kids don't need to socially distance, because that I think there are a lot of people out there who really need a hug at the moment. And I'm not a big hugger, but I actually think the kids, when they give you a cuddle, it just means so much more. And so we have a few kind of older ladies usually just needing little hugs from the kids.
Oh, do you know, the other thing that I've reflected on, and one of my thoughts for the day, I think I recorded, is, you know, when you talk to parents, they're very in tune with how to look after the the physical well-being of their kids. You know, making sure they get exercise and eat the right foods, telling the kids that they love them, and their emotional well-being. You know, so the physical, the emotional well-being is right up there, and they have all the extracurricular activities when that's allowed. But almost like spiritual well-being is just missed off.
Yeah, I think society does dumb that down. I spoke to somebody the other day about kind of just how important that actually is within not just a school setting, but within the whole society setting, is that we are whole beings, and that spiritual side, if that is missing, there's something missing within us. And many of my friends will say, oh, my kids got big questions about God, so I've told them to come to you. And so you're just kind of going, oh, thanks very much. But there is something in that kids have huge questions. They want to know where God is in the whole of this coronavirus. They want to know about all of these kind of things. And there's they've got some pretty deep kind of questions. And I think the spiritual side is hugely important for them.
Actually, that leads on nicely to my next question. Although I'm just noticing something's gone weird with my camera, and I've turned yellow. So,
well, you did turn yellow halfway through that, but I thought it was maybe because of my jumper.
Yellow. It's kind of weird.
I thought you were just sympathising with me because I was like wearing my yellow jumper today for you.
I've decided to go Oompa Loompa yellow. Anyway, I'll carry on.
As long as you're feeling okay.
I'm feeling great. I'm actually feeling fine.
Oh no, you're going white again.
So, Helen, what are your top 3 tips that you could give us to support our young people, especially during these trying times?
I had to think about that, and then so I got obviously a kind of sight of the questions earlier, and I was thinking I wouldn't have 3 tips, and then it turned out I had about 10. So I have managed to kind of condense them down into 3, I think. The number 1 tip is, and if you don't do anything else, whoever you are, the one thing that we can do that is different from everybody else, and somebody shared this with me earlier, was, and it really kind of stood out for me, was to pray for them. Actually, lots of people can teach them how to ride a bike or how to kind of do different bits and pieces, and they're all great skills and it's all really good, but the one thing that the church can do that no other people can really do is to pray for our kids and to tell them that you're praying for them, because there's something in that just, again, it kind of does just lead on from that. They have a spiritual need. We are created beings. We're created in God's image, and so of course we're created to want a relationship with Him, and we're created to need that relationship. And so praying for them means that you don't need to know anything else about them. You pray for them, and through lockdown, lots of things happen. One of the guys that's on my Facebook is a guy called Lynsey. You'll probably watch this at some point. And he was the person who did a holiday club in Dunfermline when I was 10 years old. I was 10 years old. He came over from Northern Ireland. He did this holiday club. He played his guitar with a rainbow guitar strap around the estate, and these kids just kind of all zoomed in. It was like the Pied Piper. You totally get done for that now. You can't do it this way. But we all just joined on. No such thing as PVGs in those times. And we kind of went in, and I saw these kind of folks, and they all looked really crazy. They looked as if they were having fun. They looked as if this was amazing. And I said, what's different about you? And they said, well, we just are living for Jesus. And I thought, that sounds cool. I'll do that too. 30 odd years later. And Lynsey's been watching Evie do the same thing. And so here's this guy who kind of effectively kind of led me to faith, because my parents aren't Christians, or they kind of don't go to church, and then here he is watching as my children are growing up, and that's incredible. And I know that he has prayed for me, and not only that, he also financially gives to the work that I do in SU as well, which is a huge blessing. And so knowing that there are people like that praying for you is just incredible. My gran passed away last year, and I was devastated, but not because my gran died, because my gran's a Christian and she knows exactly where she was going. It was much better for her. But the one thing that I was saying to James was, she prayed faithfully to me. She prayed faithfully for me, not to me, for me. And I missed that. I've really missed I just knew my gran was praying for me. So tip one is pray for
the children.
Pray for the children, and pray by name. There's something really special about bringing them by name to God. Of course, he knows who they are, but when you do that, you also have a link with them. And usually God will lay on your heart maybe 6 or 7 individuals who are just, they stand out in your head. You know why they stand out. They might really irritate you. They might be really good, but they stand out, and they're the ones that God wants you to kind of remember them. So pray.
Number one. Okay. Number two.
Number two, love them. Love them. And not in a flippant, oh, we love everybody kind of way. In a genuinely authentic, integrity kind of way. Love them when you don't like them. Love them when they really irritate you and make loud noises or play an instrument really badly. Love them through their hardships. Actually love them means to kind of listen to them, to like what they like, to get involved and find out what they're interested in. And if that means you have to listen to a half-hour kind of idea of what Roblox happened that day, then you've got to get down and find out what Roblox was doing. It's, in case anybody doesn't know, that it's a game, and Minecraft and all these kind of things. The number of times I will have to sit and listen to my kids talk about kind of Roblox when I'm not even interested is unbelievable. But it's not faking that not interest. It's actually trying to be interested with them and engaging with them. And I think,
Helen, that reminds me of, we've just helped a very dearly loved member of our church say goodbye to her husband, who died just a couple of weeks ago, and the funeral was on Friday. And this wonderful woman has an incredible gift of loving the children in the church. And she will get down and she'll get to know them. She'll remember their names, so that she always calls them by their right name.
It's amazing, actually.
Isn't that just such a gift?
Incredible.
And then she'll remember that they like football. And the next week she'll bring in football cards to try and engage with them. And it's just out of a beautiful heart of love. Beautiful heart of love. Sorry to interrupt, just reminded me of this wonderful woman.
Because you could do that all the time, because there's a lovely lady in Dundee, and I've been a youth worker for a long time now, so the churches that I've been youth worker in, there's story after story, isn't there? There's a lovely lady in Dundee, and she's always got a bag of tablet or sweets or things. And honestly, the number of times that we've had to say, and you'll have the same thing with Malachi about don't feed my kids, or you've got to be careful with this kid or that kid or anything else, because it's that kind of thing where she would often say, do you want to come and get something from Auntie Jean's bag? And you'd be like, oh my goodness, we can't do this, we can't do that. But it was so engaging, and it was so genuine, and it was wonderful. And that's exactly right, you know. So you have to love them, and you have to kind of listen to them. And I suppose tied in with that, tip 3 really is make time for them. And that, no, these aren't rocket science in any way, shape or form. They're actually, I don't even think they're really special to young folks or children in that sense. I think if you apply them across the board, just in general, it's about treating them as you would want to be treated yourself. But more than that, it's about expecting the best from them. We so often talk our young people down, particularly our young folks. We almost expect them to kind of mess up or to do things wrong or things like that. And we just don't expect them to be the best that they can be. And I think when we make time for them and we find a place that suits their gifts, we play to their strengths. You know, not everybody is going to be gifted in sitting and colouring and being patient and being, I'm blessed with a girl who is just, she bends over to kind of accommodate anybody. She's so good. And in church, you can say to her, just go and sit there or do that or all the rest of it. And I'm blessed with a boy who does not do that. You know, he doesn't colour in and he will not do it. But one of the guys at St. Meddan's will always speak to him when he comes in. He just gets down to his level and he says, how are you, Jack? And as Jack runs past at lightning speed, he still stood there and just said, how are you doing, Jack? You know, and Jack hasn't made any time for him yet, but it will take time. And he just nods and he speaks to him every single time. The ladies who do the biscuits, which obviously isn't happening at the moment, they've got his number because they know that he goes around the table several times, and they just, they're good with it, you know. I mean, even one of the ladies who said, I think you've had enough now, Jack, is doing that in a way that is loving him. You know, you don't have to give them things all the time in order to do that. You can say no, but the way that you say it is different. Because on the flip side of that, I had a horrible moment where somebody brought in a whole load of things for the adults, lovely biscuits, tray bakes, and then gave the kids a plate of kind of biscuits that were just from the, you know, the value tin. So you have your custard creams and your kind of, there's no problem with that. But the problem is when you kind of treat your adults to these fantastic stuff and then give your kids the scraps, you're kind of going, well, what does that tell you? You know, where does that put your kind of values and what does that say? And so it's about kind of how you do it, but make time for them, build relationships. That's the big key, isn't it?
I think one of the nicest things that happened to me was on one of my placement churches when I was training in the ministry. And my children didn't come with me till right at the end, until my placements were longer, because I didn't want to take them out of their own church family to meet lots of different ones until I was a bit more settled. But when probation, you're in your church family there for about 15 months. So the boys came with me with Stephen, and the middle son didn't really want to settle. He was missing his other church, our home church, where he kind of was baptized. Didn't want to go to the Sunday school. So Stephen spent a good couple of weeks just in the foyer because Kieran refused to come into the church and he refused to go into the Sunday school. And then one really wonderful, I think it was a couple, noticed this was happening and kind of thought out of the box and got to know Kieran and realised he was into sound and engineering. And so next minute he got promoted to be an assistant sound technician. And Kieran sat through every single service in church for the 15 months on the sound desk and had a wee role. And that was just there because someone had spent the time to see what he wanted. Yeah.
Amazing, isn't it? And it again, and the church was blessed because of it. You know, as a family, you know, the church was blessed. The couple who kind of came alongside him would have felt really great that he actually engaged, because I think that's the other thing, is if you see the kids kind of, I mean, everybody wants more kids at church. You could ask kind of anybody within our congregation, you know, what do you want to see? And they'll talk about times where Sunday school was 100 strong or 300 strong, and we had groups here and groups there, and they go, well, why is this happening? And I'm saying, well, what are we doing to encourage that? And whilst we probably will never have those types of numbers, because of coronavirus, that's not the only kind of reason why. And a lot of it is that we're not always willing to change to suit what the kids want. We expect them to fit in with what our requirements are. And so we've thrown the kids a colouring book and said, there you go, and wondered why we haven't engaged our kids at different levels. And it's not because there's any malice involved in anybody. I mean, we have a whole bunch of genuinely nice people, but we haven't quite taken the time to kind of sit down and say, well, what is it you like doing and how does that fit in? And we'd be blessed if we did that with adults. There's a whole load of men in our churches who have got amazing gifts and don't yet know how to give them either.
Yeah, that's true. But everything you said is so true, because I've heard it in the past that churches, they think back to the past, and we had 300, 400 children. Remember the days when we couldn't get everybody in the church, and remember the days. And we can't look back. We can't live in the past. We have to be in the present and see, well, we've both got children in our church. St Meddan has children in the church, and we're blessed at Dundonald to have children in our churches.
And I think we do.
We know
and I think that's what's really important about that, because I think we have the children in our church because of how good the congregation is with them. And sometimes I think they miss their role in that actually the reason that there are any families at all is because you have some people here who are most definitely valuing them. And I think people should be encouraged by that.
Most definitely. I mean, I think when I was looking for a church to call home and to be the minister, it was vital to me that there was children. So my first visit to Dundonald, I was praying, children, come through the door. And then when they all trickled in, I thought, yes, this is good, because somebody's nurturing them, and it's just so important. It's not one person's role; it's the role of all of us, as a family together. So Helen, to finish off our little interview, I've asked everybody this same question that I've interviewed. I've quite enjoyed all the answers as well. So we know that God still speaks to his children today. He is a God that's alive and active, and if we are in regular communication with him and by reading God's word and in prayer, then he speaks to our hearts. So what has God been saying to you in these strange COVID days?
Yeah, I mean, he does. He definitely does. And I was thinking it's not that difficult to kind of say what God's been speaking to me about, because he talks to me about the same thing over and over again. It's like I've not it's like I'm not very good at listening.
Really?
I mean, it's probably because I don't always want to do it. That's why, because it's that kind of thing. I am a massive Pete Greig fan. A huge Pete Greig fan. If you haven't read Pete Greig's books, then get out and read them.
I'm reading one just now, actually.
What are you reading? Are you reading
All Things New?
Oh, I haven't read that one yet, so I might need to do that. Yeah, that's his new one, isn't it? So I mean, I'm a massive Pete Greig fan. I find him really, I think the word is authentic. He just is a very genuine guy. And Pete Greig set up the 24/7 prayer movement. And so his book Dirty Glory is just life-changing. It's that whole thing where it really kind of drew me back to kind of that power of prayer again. So and he's got a fabulous free prayer course that if you want to use, it's fantastic too. Great videos, really good way of kind of going through the Lord's Prayer. And so for me, since I've come to Troon, there's probably two things that really sit very kind of just sit on me. These are the kind of things that I've been kind of really working through. And one is that I would love to have in Troon and Dundonald a 24/7 prayer room. So it's probably more of a vision than anything else, but I think to do that, God's just asking me just to pray for people, pray especially for kids. That's probably why my top tip is there, and kind of praying, because I think we underestimate how important that is. We can, I'm a real kind of like busy, do. And actually sometimes it's just stop, pray, and then go. And I think that is kind of the energy behind everything else that goes on. So kind of the prayer thing, massive. And I'm kind of one of the people that always thought, I'm not really a prayer, I'll leave that for somebody else to do. And God's kind of going, no, you are, get back here and do it. And, you know, and I'm kind of going, no, I'm not really comfortable with that. So we're having a bit of a discussion about that at the moment. And then the other one is that, and this is hilarious, my friend always makes fun of me with this, because whenever I kind of get into a worship situation or a kind of place where I'm praying or God's speaking to me in those kind of environments, and somebody mentions community, I will dissolve into a puddle of tears and mush. And so for me, God has a very much a sense where my heart breaks for his community. And so for the people of Troon, particularly, because obviously I'm in Troon, and for schools, communities, that's my big kind of, I love chaplaincy work. I love working alongside the teachers and the staff and the kids. And you can't really mention that too much within my presence without me dissolving into tears. And it's a funny kind of emotion. It's a kind of emotion that is not, I'm sad about it in any way. It's just God's heart for people and wanting to kind of work alongside and do more. I always want to do more. But actually God just says, you know, I want you to work in this kind of environment. And it's an amazing kind of, it's an amazing energy giving kind of thing. It's not like it sucks it from you. It just kind of keeps you going when it's hard and when it's tough. And I found, obviously COVID has just been the weirdest time. You know, it's been really crazy, but it's given us so many more opportunities as church that we would never have ever had. And so when it comes to community, it's incredible. You know, I mean, we just can get alongside people. It's not been an opportunity for me to stop, I have to say that. It's been an opportunity to just, you know, move up a gear, which is crazy. But it's been good. So yeah, I suppose they're the two things that kind of God's speaking to me about on a kind of regular basis.
Oh, well, thank you, Helen. Thank you for coming and sharing what's in your heart and your passion for nurturing the faith, especially of our children. And I can really resonate with your last comment that, you know, when God gives you a desire for something, a real passion for something, then he also equips you and gives you the energy to serve. And I think it's just wonderful that God's blessed you with a heart for the community of Troon, and especially your role as chaplain to the schools and to Mars. So,
and I think that's one of the reasons we get on so well, isn't it? Because you just have exactly the same for Dundonald. And I think I think that is one of the things where we have always, when you say how do we know each other, we just knew from that moment how we work together. And I know exactly how your heart beats for kind of the folks there. So I'm delighted, and I'm very happy to help you whenever I can.
Oh, thank you, Helen. I feel great. I've had James in the hot seat, and now I've had Helen. I maybe have to get Edie next.
I know. I did actually say to James, I don't think I can do this. I really don't know if I can do that.
Well, thank you so much. I'll give you a wee wave and we'll say bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynsey. See you soon.
See you soon.